welcome to Family Foundation Friday on the Authority of Love. I'm your host, Greg Williams, joined by our co-host, Mr. David Walls of the Family Foundation. And we'd like to thank you as listeners or viewers, however you may be engaging with us. Thank you for doing so, and thank you for sharing. David, thanks for being with me, brother.
Always good to be with you, Greg.
Thank you, man. Appreciate that. We've got a lot that's going on, as always the case, but I do have to ask you this. Are you bracing for Fern?
Yeah.
Because
I don't know about you, but I'm about done with this cold. My lips are cracking. I feel like I'm drying out, Greg. I don't
fingernails.
I don't know if I'm going to make it through a massive snowstorm.
Yeah, but
we'll see.
And it could be that.
Yes.
It could be that. We're praying because we pray to the weather maker, not the weather forecaster, to have him push this a little further north. And I say that in faith. Whatever happens, we will count it a joy and give thanks, but we may be stuck in our houses for a few days.
I know our kids,
that, right?
My kids want to be stuck at the house, and they want it to extend all next week through school.
Yeah, exactly. But of course, now with the technology, they can do stuff while they're at home, right?
Yes.
Can't escape it, right?
Well, thankfully, our kids' school doesn't really use that technology.
Well, okay, gotcha. That's right.
But they have their books.
Right. They still can assign something.
That's right.
So, by the way, we say all that in jest, but there is a real threat with that, and we pray for you and hope that you're prepared for that and ready to be safe and be careful out there. So, David, thanks for that. We've got a lot. I think one of the first things we might want to touch base on is the ICE protests that are clearly illegal, the way they're doing these things, but they went beyond the pale by entering into a church, not on the outside, but in your church. Share with our listeners what's going on with that.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of folks listening to us, Greg, heard about this. I mean, I think we were all shocked, really, as Christians, as Americans, to see what took place this last Sunday, where you had these protesters essentially storm into City's church in St. Paul, close to Twin Cities area there, while they were gathering to worship, opening the Word, and you saw these folks storm in and disrupt the service, try to intimidate the congregation, cursing, just a really scary and frightening situation, obviously for the families and particularly the children that were there. But really just something that should not take place, and something that is, likely illegal under federal law. And what's crazy, Greg, is you saw some, including, former CNN anchor Don Lemon, who, was a part of this, was there, I guess, YouTubing it, so to speak, while it was happening. But he and others have falsely claimed, ridiculously claimed, that somehow the First Amendment protects the right to protest a church. Yeah. And that is absolutely absurd. Right. There is no right under the First Amendment to trespass on private property, let alone a church, and to interrupt a sacred worship service. The First Amendment protects the right to gather and worship and to have that protected. So,
i.e. protection means without interference.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. So I'm continue to be thankful that we've seen so many, including folks in the Trump administration, that are already moving forward, seeking to have justice for this church and their congregation, as far as seeing what parts of federal law were violated. Don't have a lot of hope that any state laws that were violated will be enforced with the crazy liberal Democrat governor and the out of step, out of touch leadership that they seem to have in Minnesota with all the craziness that's going on in that state. But we need to be lifting up that congregation. I know a lot of churches, a lot of pastors now are having conversations about how do we, make sure that our campuses and services have the security that they need. But at the end of the day, and I've already seen some of the things from I think it's Pastor Parnell there. They have, they're moving forward. They're going to be gathering this next Sunday. They're not going to be interrupted by this. And so I think as Christians, we can take courage in how that congregation has responded to this really just disgusting spectacle that we saw happen.
2 Timothy 1:7 most of our listeners will probably be familiar with that, but we've not been given a spirit of fear and timidity, but one of love and power and self-discipline.
Right.
Now, you put all those together, and that's what faith prompts us to do. So what we're seeing from Pastor Parnell and their leadership in that congregation is we want to continue to move in faith and not fear.
Absolutely.
And show that. The other thing is it's interesting because what Don Lemon did and others by broadcasting it, which is what happens on internet and social media these days, is it really helped a lot of people that seem to be liberal in their mindset to come out against this as well.
Yeah.
There was a lot of that. So you show your hand and you think there's no limits or boundaries to these things. You can do whatever you want. That's why we have to honor, and why immigration is an issue. And even the fraud that went on in Minnesota, sure, they want this to be front page news because they don't want to remember what happened with the fraud with the so-called daycare centers and the $9 billion of fraud there. So we've got to have a rule of law, which is what a republic means, that is informed by the democracy, by the people. That's what our Constitution and our Declaration state, essentially. So that's what we're looking at. And the other thing about that, again, on a federal level, is we talked a little bit about the Obamacare, the resolution, the Hyde Amendment. There are some. What are you finding out with that? What are you hearing about that, David?
Yeah, I mean, it seems that debate and conversations are continuing to go on. So we need to continue to ensure that we draw a line in the sand, that we encourage the
senators at this point, right?
Senator Paul, Senator McConnell. You can go to our website at KentuckyFamily.org and take action on this item. Encourage them to draw the line in the sand as it relates to ensuring that our tax dollars are not used to pay for abortions. But Greg, as we sit here, it's today is the March for Life in D.C. We just crossed earlier this week the 53rd anniversary of the Roe v. Wade decision, and we know it kind of takes on a little bit different feel and sense, obviously, because we're post-Dobbs. But the reality is the battle to protect the preborn continues at an even heightened pace now in many ways than even when Roe v. Wade, that vile and evil decision was still on the books. We're thankful that it wasn't. But we're going to be praying for those that are up in D.C. I know we've got some friends from Kentucky that are up there.
Right.
That the Witness for Life, is broadcast across the nation. And we're continuing to see some good things that the Trump administration is doing. I know you wanted to share one that was just happening.
And I will say this. You mentioned praying for them, all that goes on up there, because there are other meetings with national organizations and things like that. Our good friend Adia Wishner is involved in some of those. So she's up there. They're up there for 3 or 4 days.
Yeah.
So if the winter storm comes in, that's going to create another problem. But what you were alluding to is the State Department in Trump's own administration has said, we will no longer fund experimentation on fetal tissue, abortions, gender transitions, and we're going to follow through on the research on the impact, the negative impact of the abortion death pill.
Yeah.
So all of those are positive in light of what we're dealing with the Hyde Amendment, Obamacare, and those things.
Yeah. Obviously, some concerning things that came out of at least what President Trump himself had said about being flexible. We talked about that last week and that being a line in the sand, but certainly encouraged by the developments from the State Department. And, as you and I were talking a little bit before we started recording, Greg, it is so critically important that they follow through on looking at the abortion death
pill.
And,
a thorough,
because the reality is we already know what the truth is. The truth is this is a death pill. This is a pill when it is taken and does what it's supposed to do. It ends the life of a preborn child every single time if it goes the way that the pill is designed to,
with other complications.
Absolutely. And then the research continues to show the harm to mothers, and it's on orders of magnitude more likely that a mom could have serious medical complications than even a surgical abortion. So I'm a firm believer that the FDA should revoke this pill, and our law should be it should never been approved in the first place. But there's still things that need to be done in terms of how it's being shipped across the country and across the world, coming into Kentucky.
It's simply illegal trafficking.
Absolutely.
It's trafficking of, I should say it this way, trafficking of an illegal drug.
Right.
And we need to make sure that that's codified.
Absolutely.
In law.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Well, give us an update, because we like to hit on this. There's been so many things going on. Give us an update on a few of the things that are going on in Frankfort with the legislature.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll mention another important bill that was filed this week, House Bill 421. That is the Tim Tebow bill. That was filed again. He's filed this bill before by our friend Representative Ryan Dotson, great pastor, state representative, great pro-family champion, who's also one of the candidates running for the congressional congressional district 6 here, the seat that Andy Barr currently has. But this is an important bill, the Tim Tebow bill. Just if folks aren't familiar. Named after Tim Tebow, I believe more than half the states, maybe close to 30 states, Greg, have some version of this legislation allowing homeschool students to participate in extracurricular activities, including sports.
Right.
They pay the taxes. They should be able to take advantage of those benefits. So that was an important bill. But we also just want to take a minute to remind folks on some of the bills that we were able to briefly mention in the last couple of weeks that are picking up momentum. One of those is House Bill 101. That is the bill to end the sales and use tax that is impacting churches, so specifically ending it as it relates to churches and church ministries that are being impacted by this, and really just shouldn't have to have the government interference when they're simply wanting to do ministry. A lot of this was brought to life from some churches that were involved in different recreational ministries, Upward Basketball, and so forth. And so that issue has continued to pick up momentum. Greg, I believe there's, and House Bill 101 was filed by Representative James Tipton, but I believe there's now 40 co-sponsors on that bill, which is a big threshold, because that is half of the Republican caucus within the first, essentially 2 weeks, has already signed on as co-sponsor on the bill. It's time to get that issue done. Another one that we mentioned a couple weeks ago, Representative T.J. Roberts has filed House Bill 170, and that is to protect and strengthen our religious freedom here in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. Last week, was national, actually, I believe it's International Religious Freedom Day. Important time for us to remember that our religious liberties are our most foundational freedom. And if we do not have our religious freedom adequately protected, there's really not much other freedom. They all flow from that. The ability to believe and act in faith. And so that is an incredibly important bill. That bill has, I believe, 20 co-sponsors. So
that brings us full circle, David, back to where we started with the St. Paul invasion and the city's church there. So these are important, and these laws are important. By the way, let me say one other thing that I think ties all this together. Well, I constantly see people that are going, how can you say that you're for removing immigrants or things like that? Because we have individual personal compassion, which we are called to as believers, but you don't have that on a systemic government level. You have to follow the laws. You can practice some of that, but we don't have all the information about how many people have been negatively affected or killed or things that have happened because we have not followed the law, the rule. We're fallen, broken people. We need the rules to follow them. We know that. And so it's apples and oranges.
And we've seen
people understand.
We may not know all the numbers, but the chaos because of we haven't followed the law and the disaster that immigration and all that's impacting continues to be a huge issue, obviously.
Absolutely. So, by the way, March 11th, right here in Frankfort, we're going to have our own Kentucky March for Life. So keep that on your calendar. Put it on there and keep it there and join us. Pray for that. Also, David and I and our good friend Adia Wishner have been selected. I'm humbled and honored, I know you are, to read at America Reads the Bible at Washington, D.C., which is at the Museum of the Bible.
Yes.
Right? April 18th through the 25th. So look for that. It's going to be live streamed. I'm Greg Williams, your host. Thank you for joining us. Thanks for your prayers. Thanks always to the Lord. Make it a great day, and God bless in Christ. With co-host David Walls, you're listening to Family Foundation Fridays on the Authority of Love.